How is it going? I hope everyone's doing well, and thank you for tuning in this video. Today I'm here with my third installment of my Undertaker The Last Ride reviews. Today I'll be discussing Chapter 3, End of an Era. Without wasting any more time, let's go and jump right into things. Now, Chapter 3 immediately follows Chapter 2, that ended with Undertaker's match at WrestleMania 34, his comeback, and that's where this chapter begins at. His match immediately following, backstage in Gorilla, talking to Cena, and, pretty much, kind of celebrating the match or whatnot. And, he continues to talk about how he was disappointed with his match with Cena, how, he prepared for 35, 40 and only got 5. So, he's just talking about how good he felt. Now he wanted to keep going that, and if he would have maybe gotten that, time with Cena at 34, he maybe would have called it right there. He maybe would have been done. But considering how, how good he felt and he felt he had more to offer, that's why he kept going. And obviously that led into the Saudi Arabia match he had with, Rusev at the very first one at Greatest Royal Rumble. They briefly touched on that, didn't go much in detail about it. They just briefly talked about Undertaker and, WWE going to Saudi and their relationship. So, they briefly touched on that, and then that would, quickly go into Undertaker's last Madison Square Garden match. He wanted to do that match specifically because he wasn't sure how many more opportunities he would have in the Garden, and he wanted to make sure he had one final time in the Garden. And, they lit the whole place up purple and everything, and he was just talking about how surreal that all was. So it was nice to hear, at that MSG show, he teamed with Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman, and, gave him a great sign of respect afterwards as well. And I just thought it was a really nice, little moment he was able to have with both Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns. And then, quickly go into the history with Triple H and Shawn Michaels, because, the next match he would really have would be the Super Showdown match against Triple H. He talked about how Vince called him and said, hey, would you be interested in facing Triple H one last time? And Taker said, yeah, he's comfortable with Triple H. He's worked with him several times. That's why he was fine with doing it. Because it's people he's worked with. He's comfortable with them. And, pretty much covered the entire backstory between him and Triple H and him and Shawn Michaels as well. Talk about how him and Triple H, they've never been close, but they've had such a great respect for each other that they know that if they ever needed one another, they always did. And, he talked about the relationship with Shawn Michaels, how, back in the 90s, he hated Shawn Michaels, but he had such a great deal of respect of Shawn Michaels in the ring because Shawn Michaels was so fucking good. He kind of put it past him. He was able to balance out, his hatred for him because of his respect for him in the ring. So that balanced it out. And obviously over the years when Shawn Michaels would obviously clean up and whatnot, they would have a better relationship. But they really, put back those two stories, or talk about those two stories about Undertaker in terms of relationships, and dive into the matches with Shawn and Triple H at WrestleMania. They briefly covered the WrestleMania 17 match, and then they'd quickly dive into the WrestleMania matches with Shawn Michaels at 25 and 26. Undertaker saying that those two matches are the greatest matches he's ever had, and that he'd put the WrestleMania 25 match specifically against any match ever and say that's the greatest wrestling match. And it's hard to argue it, honestly. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 25. I haven't seen it in years, but man, I still remember how incredible that match was, and I should really watch that soon, honestly. That watching this actually got me in the mood to want to watch it again. So Undertaker talked about that, and then he talked about the responsibility of having Shawn Michaels' last match, how he had to go out there and put on a great performance for Shawn, because that was Shawn's farewell, and he had to give Shawn that duty of making sure he goes out the best way possible. So they touched on that, and then in Undertaker's mind was, okay, how do we go from Shawn Michaels to Triple H? And it was a very easy tie. Obviously, Triple H was a very easy tie to Shawn Michaels, and then they went to the 27 match. The whole story was Triple H trying to get revenge for Shawn, and that's where Taker ended up beating him still. And then they want to do a rematch for 25, or not 25, I apologize, 28. And Undertaker was just saying, how could we tie this all together? How could we make this match the biggest match possible? And Hell in a Cell, they've been tied to it. Triple H and Undertaker have had the most Hell in a Cell matches out of anyone in history. So obviously that ties for that reason. Shawn Michaels, obviously, Undertaker retired Shawn Michaels. So they were just tying everything together, and they really explained the story about it. And, went into great detail about how great that match was at WrestleMania 28. And I'll never forget that super kick in the pedigree. That's probably the closest anyone has ever thought the streak was going to end. And, yeah, just an incredible moment. And talked about how they had that moment on the ramp where they all kind of looked at the ring and stood at the ramp and kind of gave that final farewell. And, he said that was completely spontaneous. It was in the moment. It wasn't planned. It just kind of happened. All three of them kind of just looked back and was like, you know what? This is it. This is it for all three of us, kind of in the same environment. So, yeah, they got in detail about that. And then obviously that lead into the Super Showdown match because, like I said, he agreed to it because it's Triple H. He felt comfortable with Triple H, so that's why he did it. They did the match. Shawn got involved. Kane got involved. And they talked about their involvements. And, they touched briefly on Taker's relationship with Kane. Talking about how, they kind of do have like a brother relationship where Taker kind of shit talks him all the time. Kane's kind of like, yeah, just kind of agrees with them. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then, you know, Taker briefly talked about his relationship with Larry, one of the medical trainers, and how they play cards all the time and how he's a sore loser. So you got some little glimpse of that and whatnot. But they dove into the Super Showdown match, which obviously set up the match at Crown Jewel. Then they covered that quickly, which I was very disappointed. I think the big thing everyone's looking forward to, including myself, for this episode was the stuff about Crown Jewel, obviously, because how that match ended up being. And I felt like they touched very briefly on that match. So I was very disappointed in that aspect. They pretty much talked about how the match came about, you know, how everyone was taken back that Shawn accepted it. You know, Shawn said he accepted because, you know, it seemed fun. It was the guys he's worked with before and guys he's comfortable with. So he's like, you know what? Why not? It's a big match. It makes sense. Do the story, and, you know, people will be interested in it. So why not do it? And that was the reason why Shawn agreed to it. But then once the match happened, they all quickly realized how bad of a fucking combination that all was. Taker called it a train wreck. Triple H, I believe, called it a disaster. Shawn called it a bad comedy movie. You know, on paper, like, in their minds, it sounded great because they're all comfortable with each other. You know, they all have worked in the past. But when it came down to it, Triple H and Undertaker, they were only working a handful of times a year. Shawn Michaels, at that point, hasn't wrestled in 8.5 years. And Kane, he's, you know, comes and goes because he's a mayor at that point. You know, so none of the guys have really been consistent, and it showed. And, of course, you know, the big selling point for Shawn, he even said in the the big selling point of the match, too, was Triple H was supposed to work majority of it. Obviously, that changed when Triple H got injured immediately into the match. So they just buried the shit out of this match and talked about how catastrophic it was and just how terrible it was. And the match really was. It was a clusterfuck, and it wasn't good by any means. And obviously, due to how terrible that match was, Undertaker could not live with that being his final match. He has to prove himself once again. And of course, that's the big sink for Chapter 4, is how Taker is gonna, you know, try and redeem himself from this shithole of a mess he did with Crown Jewel. So yeah, Chapter 3 overall, weakest one by far. It was the shortest episode. It was only like 47 minutes. And I don't know, I just feel like this episode mainly was just a recap of his relationship and feud with Triple H and Shawn Michaels, which is fine. But this just felt like more of a filler episode than anything else. I feel like you could skip this and it'd be perfectly fine. I don't know. The highlight of this episode, honestly, to me, was when they were doing the promo. Undertaker and Kane, they were doing the promo on DX for Crown Jewel. And how they said that, you know, you got 2 words for us, well, we got 3 words for you. Or you got 3 words for us, we got 3 words for you. Because obviously, you know, Triple H asked Shawn, you know, I got 3 words for you. Are you ready? So Brother Destruction go, we got 3 words for you, which obviously were rest in peace. But Undertaker goes, go fuck yourself. So that clip alone is probably the reason that's really worth watching this episode. But besides that, nothing else really. I'm not saying this episode was bad. It was still good. It was still a good episode, but to me, it just doesn't compare to the first 2. And like I said, to me, just this episode just felt like major filler. So I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it all too much, but it's still a good episode. I'm not downing it by any means, but I'm really excited for episode 4. Obviously, the big sync for that is the Saudi Arabia match against Goldberg. Hopefully, they talk more than 5 minutes about that match, just because, you know, that was a big reason I was excited for this chapter, is because I wanted to hear about the Crown Jewel match, and they talked about it for like 5 minutes. So hopefully, the Super Showdown match with Goldberg gets talked about more for 5 minutes, but we'll have to wait for June 14th to see, because they're taking a 2 or 3 week break. So we'll wait to see when chapter 4 finally airs. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, please feel free to leave a like below. And of course, till next time, I'll see you guys then. Thank you guys for watching the video.